Right now, every vendor says that they can help you with AI. But here's the truth: many things that are being pitched as AI aren't, and many of the so called experts don't actually know what they're talking about. So, in this video, I'll show you how to spot bad AI in vendor pitches before you waste time, money, and credibility. Hi, I'm Joshua Ebner. I'm a 20-year expert in AI, machine learning, and data science. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear framework for evaluating potential AI projects. You'll know the red flags to watch out for. And I'll also tell you the types of questions you should be asking to consultants or vendors so that you can cut through the hype and figure out which potential projects are actually going to align with your business strategy and drive results. Okay, first, let's talk about the major red flags associated with bad AI. First, and maybe most common or most importantly, is the lack of strategic alignment. Essentially, every great AI project is going to start with questions around the problems in the business. You need to figure out what problem you're actually trying to solve with the system. Are you trying to increase revenue? Are you trying to decrease churn, increase customer lifetime value? Are you trying to improve customer satisfaction? Figure out what problem you're trying to solve. And almost always, these issues have metrics associated with them. Churn and average cart value, those pretty much tie to revenue, although you can measure churn all by itself. There are certain productivity metrics that you can measure based off of your financial statements. You can measure customer sat in a couple of different ways. Make sure that you're identifying a metric that you are trying to drive after you've diagnosed the problem that you're trying to solve and you've figured out the right metric to use. Then you can choose the right AI tool because there are different tools that solve different problems. Next red flag, buzzwords. If people are talking about AI synergies or intelligent automation, but they're not talking about maybe some of the things that I said earlier, things like metrics and strategic alignment and solving very specific problems in your business, if they're really focusing on buzzwords, this should start raising red flags. Next, it's the absence of the data story. Good AI consultants and vendors should be talking to you about the data. Almost every type of AI, from RAG systems to AI agents, all the way over to predictive models and certain other types of techniques that you can use for strategy. We call these unsupervised learning techniques. These essentially all need data. Now, if you are using a large language model right off the shelf and not doing any AI engineering around that, you can sometimes forget about the data. But almost every successful AI system is going to need some data in some way. And if a vendor or consultant is failing to talk about that and asking what type of data assets you have, where they're at, how they're structured, whether or not they're clean, etc., that's another red flag. Next, if they're only talking about things that sound like wrappers over ChatGPT, essentially if they're only talking about things that are chatbots, that's a bit of a red flag. This kind of goes back to the first point that I made about strategic alignment and choosing the right tool. If they're only talking about ChatGPT wrappers and chatbots, what that means is that they're ignoring all of the other types of AI that make great companies successful. Many of the best companies in the world over the last couple of decades, they started out using other types of AI, things like predictive AI, unsupervised techniques that you can use for marketing and product strategy, and others. So if they're only talking about chatbots and wrappers around ChatGPT, they probably don't know about all of that other stuff, and they might not be able to help you with your actual business problems. And finally, no measurable ROI. This ties back in some way to the discussion about metrics from a couple of minutes ago. Good AI vendors should be telling you how a particular system is going to be driving metrics and how that's going to produce a return for your company. So if you invest X dollars, what are you actually going to get out of that? There should at least be some story about how your AI system is going to drive some metric, let's say like churn, which will then drive revenue, which then leads to a return on your investment. If they cannot connect the dots from their AI system to some very high level important metric on your financial statements or on your performance scorecard as a business leader, that's a red flag. So with all of that said about the red flags, what questions should you be asking? You need to ask, what problem does this solve? A good AI consultant should be diagnosing problems and figuring out how their system is going to connect to those problems. Next, what metric does this optimize? Does it increase revenue? Does it increase profit? Does it decrease churn? Does it increase customer lifetime value or customer satisfaction? Figure out the metric. 3, what data assets will be required for the system, and where will those data assets come from, and how will it be prepared? Good data consultants should understand all of these things. They need to have good answers for that, or they need to be able to work with you to answer those questions. 4th, will this system improve over time? Many AI systems can be trained with additional data. That's why I said that data is so important. So you need to be asking, will the system improve over time, and how will we make that happen? You also need to be asking the question, will the system degrade over time? Something that I kind of didn't mention before. AI systems and machine learning systems, predictive systems, can degrade over time. If they're trained or architected to operate in a high-performing way, that performance can decrease over time. A good AI vendor is going to understand that, and they're going to have answers for how the system is going to be updated or retrained or maintained as time goes on. Number 5, you need to be asking about guardrails that will mitigate risk. There are potential legal risks or compliance issues associated with AI. There are data security risks. There are sort of reputational risks associated with AI systems maybe generating some outputs that are inappropriate. We've actually seen this pretty recently with companies such as Microsoft and X.com. So you need to ask what guardrails will be in place to prevent a lot of these major AI mishaps. And 6, you need to ask about both costs and ongoing costs. There's certainly the cost of building the system, building the pilot, building that into a hardened, engineered system that's ready for deployment. But there's also ongoing maintenance costs and inference costs. Essentially, all AI systems, when they're producing their outputs, they need to be running on a piece of hardware. We call that inference, and that inference cost can be quite large depending on how the system is set up and architected. You need to ask about those ongoing costs. You also need to ask about the costs if and when the system needs to scale up. So let's say you're building a system and it's in a small prototype phase. You scale it up a little bit larger, but maybe your business grows or your user base grows. You need to figure out and have some sense of how those costs are going to increase as the system scales out. If a vendor struggles to answer these questions, you might consider walking away. It might just save you from a really bad investment. So to close out, bad AI based on hype wastes time, money, and credibility. But good AI, grounded both in business strategy and engineering discipline, helps you hit your business targets. So if you watch out for the red flags and you ask the right questions, you'll invest in systems that actually drive business value.